All right, welcome back, everyone. You're watching MSNBC's continuing coverage of the 2020 election. Right now, you see it there on your screen, Joe Biden has 220 electoral votes, President Trump 213. A lot at stake. A lot of states still undecided, despite what President Trump said. The Senate at this hour, 46 seats in the hands of the Democrats, 47 in the hands of the GOP. Some questions about whether or not the Democrats will be happy with the way things have played out, both in the House and the Senate. Some big races they were keeping an eye on that may not necessarily have panned out the way they wanted.
It has not so far been a good night for Democrats in terms of control of the Senate. They were really hoping that they had the ability to regain the Senate. They were looking at a number of races when they thought they had a good shot.
Right.
And right now, some of those races have not panned out the way they wanted them to. Others we are still waiting for also lost some seats in the House when they thought they were going to gain. Obviously, we are still waiting for election results. And the name of the game right now is patience. The votes are not all counted. Despite what the president says, there are a lot of votes out there that are still not counted. And we might not know the results of this election for days, perhaps longer, but we still are going to know potentially some major states tonight. Steve Kornacki has been monitoring Wisconsin, a state that Democrats were very hopeful about, which is extremely close right now. We've all been waiting for the count in Milwaukee, which should be coming, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, any moment now.
I keep hyping this. You're going to stop believing me at some point, but I swear any second now. Look, this is a real battle for 270 here. Here's what's left. This is the real estate left to be claimed, and we are still waiting. Nothing has been updated since the last time we looked. The bottom line here in Wisconsin, Donald Trump leads right now by just over 100,000 votes, 108,000 votes. What's left to come is certainly going to favor Joe Biden. The question is it going to favor him by 108,000 votes? By far the biggest thing left here, it's the absentee vote in the city of Milwaukee. That's what we keep saying. We think we're going to get any minute now. I say it is past 4 a.m. on the East Coast. I really think, based on what they've been saying, we're going to get it any minute now. That's going to be the biggest thing left here. There's the potential there. Let's see if that vote comes in. Does that erase all that 108,000? Does it fall short? Does it go over? It's going to be that big what comes in there. There are some other outstanding things. Kenosha, we are waiting on absentee vote from Kenosha. We are waiting on the city of Green Bay. There are a few other small Republican spots on this map, too, that might come in. Nothing, though, the size of Milwaukee and that absentee vote. So, again, trust me, I'll let you know as soon as
I was going to tell you this, Steve. The good news is we're not going anywhere, so we're going to be here even if that comes in. But let me just ask you really quickly. You're saying there's about 100-plus votes that favor Trump over Joe Biden at this moment. Do we have a number of the outstanding ballots that could potentially still be coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I'll show you this. This is my outstanding vote feature here, so you can see it. And I mean, again, like that just gives you the scale of what we're looking at here. Overwhelmingly, the votes that are yet to come in here and that are about to come in are coming from this Milwaukee basically, it's the Milwaukee absentee. You see here Kenosha. There's still a little bit there in Kenosha. You see Green Bay. Actually, the second biggest thing on the board right now is Green Bay. We got to get all the votes still in from Green Bay. And you see these little dots that kind of pick up around the map here. A lot of these, not all, but a lot of these are Republican areas. The scale of the vote to be reported in there, you're usually talking the hundreds, whereas we're talking about, is this going to be 100,000? Is it a plurality here for Biden going to be 100,000 out of Milwaukee County? So, that's why I say this is really the story right now. But if this leaves us in a place where it's a couple hundred votes either way, then these little dots start to become very important.
Steve, are we going to know what direction this election is headed once we know Wisconsin?
Wisconsin is a huge piece of the electoral map puzzle right now. Let's zoom out and take a look at that. And again, you see 220 to 213 right here. Wisconsin worth 10. Let's look at this. Let's look at this from Biden's standpoint right now, because he is leading in a couple of states I'm looking at right now. We say if Biden were to hold on in Arizona, where he's ahead in the vote returns right now, and if he were to hold on in Nevada, and I don't want to forget, if he were to get Hawaii too, Democratic stronghold there, 17, 21, 31, that would move him up to 251 if he were to get Wisconsin. At that point, You got Michigan next door, and if you're able to pull out Wisconsin, maybe you feel a little bit better about Michigan. That's worth 16. You got 20 available in Pennsylvania. You got 15 available in North Carolina, although that one, I got to say, the vote that's left to come in North Carolina, what Democrats need is just, they need a ton of votes that have been put in the mail basically in the last day in North Carolina and still be arriving. And you got 16 in Georgia. Georgia's a very interesting one right now because the Democrats are making up ground late with votes, late arriving vote returns from the Atlanta metro area. So, you know, for the Democrats right now, they certainly have their eye on Georgia. They believe they can get an Arizona, a Nevada, a Hawaii, certainly. They really got to pick up, I think, Wisconsin here to start breathing a little more easily if you're a Democrat. So that's why that vote is so crucial there.
It is 4:06 in the morning. Steve, you have been on the air since I woke up this morning, pretty much straight. You're still doing math in your head on the fly. I'm so impressed. Tell me what your spidey sense is, how you're feeling, what your spidey sense says about Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a question. I just keep looking at that to see, and somebody will shout in my ear if Milwaukee County comes right now. I mean, take a look at this. This is 102,000 votes. And again, let's put our filter on here. Where is the remaining vote? Joe Biden's trying to make up 102,000. You see Fulton County. You see DeKalb next door. You see Macon, Augusta. The biggest circles here, that's Albany down there. The biggest circles here are in the Democratic areas. And I mean, the core Democratic areas. You know, you're talking about in Fulton County here, somewhere Joe Biden's winning with north of 70% of the vote right now. So there are opportunities here for them to get close. But again, there are some smaller areas, too, that favor Trump. We've seen Trump continue his strength in rural areas with large rural white populations, blue-collar white populations. His strength from 2016, you are still seeing it. You're seeing it in the South in Georgia. You are seeing it in the North in Wisconsin. So there are still places here where Trump can pick something up. So, yeah, it's one of those. There's just some high population, high density, heavily Democratic areas left to come here. Is that enough to get to 102,000? I'm avoiding making a prediction,
right,
Katie, because I don't know. And one of the variables here is, too, we are a little unclear exactly how many votes are left to be counted here. So we're trying to determine that. But you see, there's the potential here, just given the terrain we're talking about, but very close.
All right, we're going to let you keep working on those Milwaukee numbers for us, see if you get an update. If you do, wave us. We'll see you. We'll come right back to you. In the meantime, we do want to bring in Jason Johnson, contributor to The Grio and professor of politics and journalism at Morgan State University. Jason, good to talk to you. So I know it's been a long day for you as well. We've been tracking this throughout the course of the day, but now we have something to actually work with. When you look at the lay of the land at this hour, you're looking at the states that it's coming down to, certainly Georgia, Wisconsin. How do you think Democrats are feeling with the way the map is shaping up to be at 4 a.m.?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. If you talk to people at the state level, most of them are still very anxious and very, very concerned. The people who I've talked to within the Biden campaign have pretty much said, this is what we told you was going to happen all along. And they're still remaining calm. I can tell you from a purely academic standpoint, when I've talked to a lot of people about polling, I thought it was kind of a lazy thing to say, oh, the polls are wrong in 2016, because they weren't on a lot of different levels. But this year, this is looking strange. I mean, it's just looking strange that we've had so many different instances where polling has been improved, and yet you see these results that are just nowhere close to what anybody expected. And I don't know if we're going to find out later on that it has to do with mistakes in polling, or if it has to do with tampering of the vote, et cetera, et cetera. But to see what we saw in Florida, to see the Democrats lose 6 House seats, in a night that was, you know, very much in their favor with turnout, that's strange. And I think there's some structural things we need to really examine about how we do our coverage and our analysis of upcoming elections.
I think you're right. I think, again, just like in 2016, there should be a serious conversation about polling, especially on the district level, where we're seeing Democrats lose seats in the House. They're also very hopeful about the Senate, and it's not looking so great right now. Other than that, though, barring any nefarious behavior, and right now we don't have any evidence of that, Do the Democrats need to do some soul searching about who they are appealing to? I mean, Miami-Dade County, the Hispanic vote, Donald Trump gained a lot of the Hispanic vote. Clearly, socialism and the labeling that Donald Trump did of Joe Biden worked among Cuban Americans, it seems, in Miami-Dade. There's also, when you look at Wisconsin, and Steve's been going over these numbers in these counties, when you look at 2012 and what Obama did in Wisconsin, it's mostly blue. You look at 2016 and now 2020, it is mostly red. Democrats are still not appealing to white, rural, working class voters. What is the soul searching going to be once this election is over?
Well, I think you're talking about completely different things, Katie. One, and I've had this conversation with a lot of sort of the Latino scholars that I know and that I work with, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to move away and start disaggregating this word Latino, because what we saw in Arizona versus what we saw in Texas versus what we saw in Florida are very different things. Just because people may be native Spanish speakers or second language Spanish speakers in their home doesn't mean their political identities are the same. A lot of Hispanics are white, and they identify as white, and they vote like white Americans. I mean, you know, quote-unquote Latino voters are the second largest group in favor of Donald Trump behind white people. So that explains a lot of things. I mean, I've always thought all along, look, if you're convinced that Joe Biden is a socialist, you were never going to vote for a Democrat anyway. It's a ridiculous claim. So I think we need to be smarter, both as parties and as analysts, as to what ethnic groups we're talking about and what they may mean. As far as white working class voters, let's be candid. I mean, you know, Joe Biden was always going to have a struggle with non-college educated white people, but it remains to be seen what the story will be, because we don't know what's going to happen in Wisconsin. And once we see that, maybe then we can have the full narrative.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, and I think you're right to say that Latino Hispanic voters are not a monolith. No ethnic group is a monolith. How do you, if you're the Democratic Party, us in the media, how do you start delineating blocks of voters? What is a better way to look at it?
Well, first, it's about spending money, right? It's spending money in these particular communities. It's about long-term work. If you talk to people in Arizona, what they talk about is, you know, Chief Arpaio, the Show Me Your Papers, Senate Bill 1070 in Arizona. Those things activated and galvanized a whole generation of Spanish-speaking voters for years. So by the time it came to election time, people were already active. I also think, and the same thing applies to the African-American community in 2008 and 2012 and 2016, the more Hispanic Americans that we have in media who are intimately familiar with these communities, we don't get as surprised. You know, when I've been able to make assessments about how black voters were behaving in Georgia, it was because, hey, you had lots of African Americans who were down there reporting. It's like, look, this is what I'm hearing. There's certain things that I may hear that different kinds of reporters don't. I think if we had larger numbers of analysts and consultants who were members of these communities, we might get a better assessment and wouldn't get as surprised as we do on election nights. Because, again, I think you can draw completely different stories from what happened in Texas and what happened in Arizona and what happened in Florida. But if we had experts in all these areas, we would probably know how we could draw a story from it.
All right, Jason Johnson, appreciate you joining us this hour. Thanks very much for that. Let's cross over now to Philadelphia and bring in Rahima Ellis, NBC News correspondent. Rahima, all eyes are on Pennsylvania, all eyes certainly on Philadelphia. The president has put that state, and specifically Philadelphia, in his crosshairs over the past couple of days. Give us a sense of, you know, how things have been playing out there throughout the course of today, or certainly Election Day, and now looking ahead into how the counting will resume on Wednesday morning.
Well, it's not that the counting is going to resume on Wednesday morning, Eamon. Look over here. This is the Pennsylvania Convention Center. The counting is going on. Up on the second floor of this building, this is the central place where they are bringing in all of those mail ballots, and they're counting them around the clock, literally 24 hours. They are nonstop. Now, we're not hearing what the reporting is of that count, and this is what's so important. This is Philadelphia, the largest of the two big cities in Pennsylvania, the other one being Pittsburgh out in Allegheny County. The largest number of mail ballots came from here, 430,000 mail ballots. They have received 350,000 of them, right up there. Now, what they're going to do is they're also going to receive as many other ballots that have been postmarked as of Election Day at 8 p.m. And they have until 5 o'clock on Friday for those to be brought in by the United States Postal Service into this building, and they're going to be counted. Again, one of the important things is you're not going to hear what the numbers are out of there, because we were told just a few hours ago that first they're going to be reporting the in-person voting that occurred on Election Day. They still got a lot of work to do on that. And only then will they start to tell you what these numbers are out of here. They don't think they're going to be able to tell you anything for not just hours, but days to come. As I say, they're going to wait until they've got everything counted, and then they're going to push it out in a block. The governor of Pennsylvania says he wants people to be calm and patient and confident that every single mail-in ballot that was duly submitted on time is indeed going to be counted. It's going to take a while, and it's going to be, they think it's going to be decisive in determining who is going to win the state. The other reason why those ballots are so important, because remember what happened in 2016. Hillary Clinton lost this very strong Democratic state by less than 1%, and that was 44,000 votes. Again, we're talking about upwards of 430,000 mail-in ballots that were sent out and have yet, all of them have not yet been received. It could be critical in determining who wins this race. And again, we're just talking about what's happening here in the city of Philadelphia, to say nothing of what is going on in the city of Pittsburgh, out in Allegheny County, out west.
I was talking to the Lieutenant Governor, John Fetterman, today about the ballots that come in after the polls closed yesterday now in Pennsylvania, and they said they will be separated out just in case
there's a legal
there are
challenge,
legal challenges there. They are taking every precaution, but they say, and they firmly believe, and they will stand by, that all of those votes are valid. They were postmarked before Election Day. It's not the fault of the voter. They got it in on time. It's the fault of the Postal Service getting it back to those election offices. There was also a
and they'll have until Friday, right?
They have until Friday. There's also a federal order today for all postal offices to do a sweep of their facilities across the country to make sure that there aren't any uncounted ballots, undelivered ballots in those facilities. Eamon, let's go to our panel. Let's bring in Chuck Rocha, Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders campaign. Susan Del Percio, Republican strategist and senior advisor to the Lincoln Project. Peter Hamby, Vanity Fair contributor and host of Good Luck America, fitting title tonight, on Snapchat, and NBC News political contributor and former Republican Florida Congressman David Jolly. Chuck, I want to start with you. First off, how are you feeling tonight? What do you think about the election results so far?
It's just classic 2020. I'm so tired of 2020. When it slows down just enough, I'm going to get off and walk the rest of the way.
Okay, well, tell me about how you think Joe Biden is doing. I mean, I know Miami-Dade, for instance, was a bit of a letdown. And the expectation was not that the Biden team was going to win Florida, but Miami-Dade, the numbers coming out of there were not what the Biden team or Democrats would have expected for a Democrat in that normally very blue county, a county that Hillary Clinton won by a much wider margin than Joe Biden did.
You know, to Jason's point earlier, I wasn't surprised, and I'm not surprised about what happened in Florida. And Brother Jolly knows the same thing, is that we're not a monolith. And people have been just saying and using that word like they don't even know what it means. And to be honest, I only figured out what it was a couple of weeks ago. But look in Arizona, where Biden won 71% of the vote. But we're tonight in Miami-Dade, Biden underperformed Hillary Clinton by almost 18 points. We lost 2 congressional districts down there that we should not have won because of what happened down there. There's going to be a lot of Sunday morning, Monday morning quarterbacking on what happened. I've been doing this for 31 years. I've been watching the Latino vote come and go, ebb and flow. We're becoming younger. The average Latino voter in America is 27. But you've always got to take Florida and you kind of got to set it over to the side. Joe Biden's going to do fine with the Latino vote in all the other states. But we do need to do a deep dive in Florida and how the money was actually spent, because I watched a lot of money go through a lot of woke white consultants and go around the Latino communities on the ground.
What do you think about the messaging the Biden team did when the Trump team tried to paint Biden as a socialist? And that obviously resonated with a number of voters in Miami-Dade.
I remember getting a phone call from Brother Joe Garcia down there that was a congressman. This was in the late summer, and he was like, Chuck, you got to get somebody on these Miami radio stations to push back on this socialism and communism stuff. He goes, I know that it's wrong. We all get that it's wrong, any of us with half of a brain, but you just have to push back every day and put together an operation. That coupled with probably the most misinformation campaign that I've ever seen run in Spanish in my 31 years of running campaigns. And I've come from Texas. I've seen a few misinformations. What we saw in Florida, what we saw in Miami had a dramatic effect. How big will yet to be seen, but I've never seen the disinformation and just the badness what people were doing to our community by spreading lies.
David, I want you to comment on this, but first, just a little bit of information. I know we've been waiting for Milwaukee, an update for our viewers. Shaq Brewster is reporting that the city of Milwaukee just arrived to the courthouse with their absentee data. It could take roughly a half an hour to upload the data and to post it. So mark your watches. 4:21, maybe at 4:51, we're going to find out what happened in Milwaukee and maybe what happened in Wisconsin. David, though, back to Florida and Miami-Dade and more broadly Florida. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I fully agree. In South Florida, Democrats have an issue with the Cuban-American Hispanic population, some of the Venezuelan Americans, others for whom, frankly, you can label it socialism or not, Katie, but the reality is if those communities look at the platforms of the two parties, it is a uniquely situated Hispanic community in South Florida, and issues of big government resonate. And then bring in the wordsmith on the Republican side who tags everything as socialism, and it's very effective. Statewide, look, I spoke today with both the chair of the Florida Democratic Party as well as the chair of the Florida Republican Party. For 2 years, they each have been mobilizing the 67-county strategy. They both were optimistic about it. Democrats have the highest number of registrations they've ever had, but Republicans will tell you they've closed the gap to a smaller delta than they've ever had between the two parties. Republicans trailing by about 100,000 votes right now. Each of them knew it was going to come down to how the MPAs or the independents performed. Clearly, they broke slightly towards Republicans today. One interesting thing in this election, given the COVID pandemic, when the Democratic Party chair told me when the pandemic hit, they had to stop a lot of their voter registration and mobilization and move to a vote-by-mail strategy. The Republican chairman said they just kept pressing. They had about 5,000 community events, some of them household events, some of them rallies. They had about 4.5 million door knocks despite the pandemic. And look, whether or not that was what put them over the edge in terms of mobilizing and getting out the vote, clearly Republicans tonight showed they can still win a 2-point race in the state of Florida.
Let me, David, really pick up on a point that you just brought up there, and that has to deal specifically with the Republican inroads they made into the state of Florida, because obviously Democrats were hopeful that they're going to flip that state along with Texas, perhaps even North Carolina. But specifically, when you're talking about the pandemic and their efforts to mobilize and register more, if you will, NPAs or at least new voters in that state, it seems like that effort fell somewhat short given the turnout so far that we're seeing in Florida and obviously going to President Trump. But ultimately, the real shortage here has been the messaging of the Democrats to try to get something to stick on President Trump in that state, the way that Katie was talking about the socialist label against, Joe Biden with the Cuban voters. It didn't seem like anything that Joe Biden was sticking on President Trump, whether it was COVID-related or the economy, really worked in Florida.
Yeah, I love that question, Eamon, because we were looking at two demographics. One, the senior vote that seemed to break a little bit more towards Biden than perhaps towards Democrats in the past. You talk about the villages in Central Florida. They got to about 32, 33%, but it wasn't a significant move. And then inroads within the Republican and, frankly, the Trump campaign with African-American male voters. They saw a statistically significant move a little higher. Now, you're still talking just high single digits or low double digits, not a significant portion of the demographic. But, Eamon, to your point, I've been in Florida politics a long time. I've been in politics my whole life. I'm looking at an election like tonight, and I'm wondering, despite all of the drama of the last 4 years, the outrage of the last 4 years, the unprecedented behavior of a president and a party in the GOP that follows him and affirms him, and I wonder, do candidates even really matter now? Or are our allegiances truly just red and blue, and we are going to perform as a nation in a strictly partisan way regardless of who's on the ballot. You could look at Florida tonight and say maybe that proves the case.
I was going to say, anecdotally, from some of the folks I spoke to in Florida, it seems it was more about the partisan allegiance than it is about a specific candidate. Peter, you want to weigh in on I understand you wanted to weigh in on this?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a misleading narrative getting out there. Joe Biden outperformed Hillary Clinton in terms of her raw vote number across the country, in pretty much every county, including Hispanic counties. He outran Hillary Clinton in Orange County in Florida, which is where you have a lot of Puerto Rican voters around Orlando. He outran Hillary Clinton in Hidalgo County in South Texas. And he did pretty well across Florida. He outran Andrew Gillum in Duval County. He outran Hillary in Pensacola. Like, he did well in Florida. But if you go to Miami-Dade, he was basically at parity with Hillary Clinton. The issue here is that Donald Trump added 200,000 votes to his vote number in Miami-Dade. Whether or not those are all Cubans, maybe they are. He added to his vote number in Hispanic counties around the country. Democrats need to ask themselves not just, what can we do better, but they need to examine why Trump is winning in these communities. I spent a lot of time in Texas covering Rick Perry when he was governor. When he first ran for governor, he won 13% of the Hispanic vote. When he got reelected in 2010, he won 38% of the Hispanic vote. And when you talk to him and Ted Cruz, frankly, who also won about 38% of the vote against Beto O'Rourke in 2018, these are culturally conservative people in Texas, for instance. They go to church. They own guns. A lot of them are small business owners. And this gets the monolith question. A lot of them are second, third, fourth generation Mexican-American immigrants who might be appalled at the fact that Donald Trump is putting kids in cages. But those might also be immigrants from El Salvador who are coming here illegally to them, and they don't like that. There are just a lot of different discrete communities who might also just be patriotic and like Trump because he talks brashly about America, as silly as that may seem to a lot of people who live on Twitter. So Trump is adding to his Hispanic vote totals in all of these communities, whereas Biden is actually doing better than Hillary.
I think that's what we've been trying to say. Whereas the Democrats believe that they had a lot of room to build among the Hispanic and Latino communities. They've been targeting those communities for a long time, believing that they were part of the Democratic fold, only to see that Donald Trump eat away at some of that, and Donald Trump to strengthen his hold as he claimed he would in 2016. And there was a lot of eye rolling among, as you said, the Twitter class, and clearly that is happening. Susan Del Percio, more broadly, when we look across the country, and this is a race that is very much still up in the air, and Democrats could come out on top in the election. So they're doing better in Arizona than anyone would have expected a few months back. They came pretty close in Texas, all things considered. They're still open in Georgia, which is traditionally quite a red state. There are a lot of bright spots for Democrats. But this election really comes down to, and I think David was saying this, to a matter of personality. I mean, Donald Trump did so much in this last 4 years. You and I have discussed a lot of it, the child separations, the Muslim ban. He was impeached. The list goes on and on. I mean, I could spend quite a long time naming the things that were extraordinarily controversial during this 4 years. Also, his response to the coronavirus. When you look at this map right now at 4:28 a.m., what are your thoughts?
Well, Katie, I certainly am no supporter of Donald Trump, and I can go on for hours about the ways he's failed our country. However, that being said, the Trump team has been working very hard since 2016 to find new voters, to work the states. They've shown that they can do it in two ways. One, they got right into the state parties to avoid any potential primary. That was amazing work that they did in taking control of states around the country. But the second thing is finding those voters. Because as Peter said, in Florida, you had 200,000 more voters Trump got than so far anyway, than in 2016. At 2016, Trump had almost 250,000 more voters than Mitt Romney did in 2012. They are finding and registering voters. They are also doing another thing. While there's a national message going out, and we know that these are not national campaigns, the Trump campaign has been targeting the Cuban American community since he was elected. He has not stopped. We all kind of rolled our eyes when he announced that he was running for re-election just hours after he was sworn in as president. But he has been doing it, and it's been in small, focused, determined, laser-focused, I should say, ways that have gone after small slivers of groups that are now adding up. So the work they have put in has started to pay off. And Joe Biden couldn't do it because he wasn't the nominee until August. So it is about personality, but it's also being able to brand a message, which Trump has done, which, you know, again, the outcome is far from over. I happen to think that Biden's still in very good shape to win. Arizona puts things in a whole different category as far as what he needs to win. And when you look at the map, even without Pennsylvania, he can still get to 270. So I think that this is far from over, but you cannot overlook the work that the Trump campaign has put in.
Steve Kornacki is focused heavily on Wisconsin right now. We are watching the numbers come in. They're not coming in yet. We're watching from Milwaukee County. We're counting down 20 minutes or so before we expect to get them. So, Steve, are you okay over there?
I feel like I'm a used car salesman. I'm making all these promises. One thing I can give you an update on is we are waiting on the absentee vote from Milwaukee County. It has been brought over to the facility, and we were told, I believe about 20 minutes ago now, that it takes 30 minutes to upload it to the computer. So I know I've been saying this forever, but apparently they have the votes, and apparently they are in the process of getting them onto this computer. And at that point, we are going to find out. This is the Milwaukee County total right now. How much does it change? And that's going to be the story, because Trump continues to lead by 107,000. You know, this could be about a 100,000 vote gain. This could be bigger for Joe Biden. This is going to be very telling if you get it.
This is gonna tell us a lot about where this election is going. And just to re-emphasize what Susan Del Percio was saying, there are some really bright spots left on the map for Democrats. That does include Arizona, which is a state that they want to flip. It also includes Georgia, which is a state that they still have a chance to flip. I know things aren't looking as great in North Carolina, but those are the states that we could learn sooner than later. We're still going to have to wait quite a bit of time, Steve, for Pennsylvania, Michigan.
Although, again, I really do feel this is a big moment we're coming up on here in Wisconsin. If Biden gets over the top and gets Wisconsin, you can do the math here. If he gets 4 in Hawaii, 224. If he gets 11 in Arizona, 235. If he gets 6 in Nevada, 241. If he gets 10 here in Wisconsin, 251. And if he pulls that off, perhaps it would make you think he's more likely to get Michigan in the end. Gets that, he's at 267. And at that point, okay, as Pennsylvania, we'll see what happens there. Or we're looking at Maine right now, where statewide Biden's leading in the vote. In the 2nd congressional district of Maine, he's trailing, but he could get 3 if he gets those 3. 270.
You know, someone get Steve another bottle of Diet Coke, I think, because we're going to be here for a little while longer. Don't go anywhere. Milwaukee, those results are coming to us. You're not going to want to miss that. We also have a lot of Senate races to discuss. Here is where the Senate stands at this hour. 46 Democrats, 47 Republicans. There are still some open races. Also a big one in Arizona. Stay with us.
Actually, a call to make at 4:38 a.m. The state of Hawaii and its 4 electoral votes going to Joe Biden. He is the projected winner in that state. We just saw Steve talk about why that is important. Once again, Hawaii now being called for Joe Biden, winning there quite substantially, 65% to Joe Biden. That brings his total up to 224 electoral votes to President Trump's 213. Here's where things stand now in the Senate with everything that has been going on at this hour. Republicans control, I believe, 47 seats. You see it right there on your screen. 46 to the Democrats. there are still, do the math here with me because I'm not really good at math at 4:30 in the morning.
7
seats up for grabs.
7 seats up for grabs. I hope that's 7 because I'm frankly,
Hopefully.
I'm bad at math when I'm wide awake and drinking coffee. Right now, let's look at the state of Maine and the Senate race because Democrats are very hopeful about the state of Maine. 66% of the vote in. It is still too early to call. You see Susan Collins with a slight lead over her competitor, Sarah Gideon. Democrats are still hopeful that Susan Collins will not keep that seat. There are a lot of other seats out there, and there's a lot of talk about whether the Democrats are going to be able to inch this out in the Senate. So joining us now is former Congressman and Democrat Richard Gephardt of Missouri, who spent time as both majority and minority leader in the House. So he knows that the sword can cut both ways. Yeah. Mr. Gephardt, thanks so much for joining us. What do you think so far of what we're seeing? The Democrats, they thought they were going to gain seats in the House, didn't eke that out, actually lost some seats. And the Senate is getting farther and farther away from their grasp. This was not the night that Democrats were hoping for. It's not the night that the polls showed.
Well, we're a closely divided country. We have been for some time, and that's what you're still seeing. Yeah, the Democrats thought they could pick up seats in the House, and they thought they could win the Senate. We'll see what happens when all the votes are counted. My main concern right now is whether or not we're going to count all the votes before candidates decide what the election is. So I've been part of a group of 40 former federal officials. We call it the National Council for Electoral Integrity. And we've actually been running ads in the big swing states telling people that this could take a long time to count these votes because of the pandemic and the high volume of mail-in ballots. And during that count, people have to be patient. They have to demand that every vote be counted. They have to reject violence if it comes to that with protests during this period of time. And we have to let the voters, the people, decide this election. No one else can decide this election, only the people.
What happens if the Republicans are able to maintain control of the Senate, if Donald Trump wins re-election? These are all big ifs right now, but I'm just gaming out scenarios. What is your expectation for how unleashed the president is going to feel and how unwilling Republicans are going to be to rein him in?
Well, it's a hypothetical question. Obviously, he's been pretty unleashed in the last 4 years. So if he wins re-election and he still has a majority in the Senate, he's got an open lane. And he will continue, I assume, to do the things that he's done, unfortunately. I wish that we would win this election. We still don't know what the result is. And again, we have to be patient and let these election officials, which have done a great job in putting this election together, count these votes and give us the verdict at the end of the day. This is a democracy that's based on being able to decide close votes and have the losing side accept that result. That's the essence of democracy. And my hope and prayer tonight, or this morning, is that both sides will accept whatever the result comes from the voters.
All right, Mr. Gephardt, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us. We want to bring you an update, the much-anticipated numbers, an update now from Milwaukee. Steve Kornacki just got those numbers in. What do you got, Steve?
I told you these could be critical. Look at this. Joe Biden has moved into the lead in Wisconsin by 11,000 votes, and it is courtesy of the city of Milwaukee absentee vote. You can see that has now been reported. It moves Biden's lead in Milwaukee County up to about 183,000 votes. Basically, what just happened here is the absentee vote. City of Milwaukee, we were saying this was going to be overwhelmingly Democratic. The gap statewide for Biden, as this vote was being reported, he was down 108,000 votes statewide. He got 143,000 votes absentee votes that were counted here in Milwaukee. Donald Trump's total was 24,000, 143,000 to 24,000. We expected this to be big. That is very big. And what that has done, again, is it has moved Joe Biden 11,000 votes ahead in Wisconsin. Now, that is still close. What is left on this map? Let me see if this has changed. We are still waiting for the city of Green Bay. This is Brown County. Now, Brown County is on the whole, it's been friendly to Donald Trump. You see, this is basically the rest of Brown County except Green Bay. If Green Bay goes a little bit more Democratic when the vote comes in, this might not be a vote gain for Trump, even though the county is red here. Let me see, did we get the rest of Washington in? We had a little bit. This is a Republican county here, one of those wow counties. Trying to track down if we have a little bit of extra vote here. There just aren't many places. There's, how about this? There's the city of Kenosha. We got the absentee vote from the city of Kenosha. Kenosha County, the city of Kenosha, the absentee vote too. That could also be a little bit more favorable to Biden than the rest of the county, a bit of a dynamic like you see in Green Bay. For the Biden campaign, I'm sure they are very happy to see this number right now. So it's 11,000. I'm just seeing if anything else has changed. I'm going to try to track down exactly how many votes are left in the state right now. But you saw it. Biden was staring at that gap all night and was going to need Milwaukee County to erase it. He's erased it and now given himself an 11,000 vote pad with not much left on this map to be counted. I'm just going to call that up and see.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was just going to ask you to
pull up. We still got the Milwaukee bubble. That'll come down.
The Milwaukee. I was going to say the bubble gives us a sense of how many votes are outstanding. So that's going to be critical in the final tally for what we're trying to tabulate here, right?
Yeah, no, and there are still some votes left here, so we're trying to figure out exactly where. But I said for a long time there, the question was, are there 110,000 worth of votes left for Biden, to net and to take the lead? He just showed there were. Now this has flipped around from Trump's standpoint. Is there a net of 11,000 left on this map for Donald Trump to get back in the lead? I mean, my God, this state in 2016, you remember, it was a 23,000 vote victory statewide for Donald Trump. And with that, Joe Biden's moved up 11,000. This is a state, it is in the Trump era, this is a tight state.
Are we going to be able to call Wisconsin tonight?
I want to confer with the decision desk and see what they think about it. I mean, again, this is exceedingly narrow, and I do know there is some other vote out right here, so I want to confer with them and see what they're saying about this. That's a very narrow margin right now that just came down to 10,900.
So if Joe Biden wins Wisconsin, again, that is an if. He's only pulled ahead. There's still a vote out. We're not calling it. But if he does, where do we land in our race to 270?
That's a hugely significant victory for Biden if he does get it in Wisconsin for the road to 270 for him. Because, again, we were saying we had all these opportunities he did down here, Florida, Texas, et cetera, that so far he's not hitting any. We'll see what happens in Georgia and North Carolina. If he doesn't get Georgia and North Carolina, the path that exists is you win Arizona, hold on to Nevada. We'll see what happens, but he leads in the tabulations, Biden does, in both those states right now. You're not seeing it on this map, but he did flip. Biden did that congressional district in Nebraska. That was part of the recipe. Then get Wisconsin and then get Michigan. And that combination could get him there. 16 electoral votes, 10 electoral votes, 11 electoral votes, 6. Also getting Hawaii a few minutes ago. And Maine, that's the one I knew I was forgetting one there. Maine. Right. With those 3, if he doesn't get that congressional district, he only needs to get 3 out of Maine. So that could be a path. But this also, if he gets Wisconsin, it opens up a little flexibility for Joe Biden in the path, too. He could get a Pennsylvania instead of a Michigan instead of a Pennsylvania, a Georgia instead of either. There would be options for him, a lot more options.
Yeah, certainly he's kept his options open, as you've been outlining throughout the night.
So, yeah, again, let's just check back in there and see if it's sitting at 10,600. I am eyeing Washington County here, one of those wow counties. It does look like there are some straggling precincts here that could move that a little bit closer. So let me just take a look here and see if we can get an exact sense where the outstanding vote is. But Trump's the one playing catch-up now in Wisconsin.
What about the city of Green Bay and the city of Kenosha?
Yeah, that's still waiting on it. That's the big one. Green Bay in Brown County and Still waiting on Kenosha as well. So I believe it's in Kenosha, it's what we just saw in Milwaukee. It's the absentee vote that they're doing at a separate facility. They're going to report that out. Green Bay, we're waiting on the vote there, too. We've gotten the rest of the county. So, again, there are, if you're a Democrat, I think, some reasons to suspect that vote might not be hostile to you. But that's, we got to see it tonight.
So Biden leads by 10,613. That is a very small margin, even smaller than 2016, where Trump won. Is there an automatic recount trigger in the state of Wisconsin? I know Florida has one. Does Wisconsin have that?
I have to go double check this. I'm just thinking back to 2016 when, it was called that night, election night, at 23,000 votes. We're sitting here inside. That was 0.7%. If it's inside of 0.5%, I don't know offhand. I'm saying to my producer, Adam, can you let me know if you get that information, if that is triggered inside 0.5%?
Hey, Steve, you and I, when we were talking about this over the past 24 hours or so, I remember you were clearly saying that it all could come back to the 3 states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. With the way things are shaping out to be, and the ventures that the Biden campaign, went in Florida, went in Ohio, went in Texas, it is kind of surprisingly playing out as expected to some degree, that it is going to come back to these 3 states that you have been hammering about for the past couple of days.
It all comes back almost to 2016, doesn't it?
Right.
I mean, that's this map. It's amazing to me when you look at this map tonight. So far, we've had one call that's a change from 2016, and it's that single electoral vote in Omaha. That's the switch tonight. Now, Biden is leading in the tabulation in Arizona. If he can hang on and win there, that would be a switch. And then he's looking to pull some off. But then it comes down to the Midwest. Those become the pick-off opportunities for Biden. It's taken a long time to get there.
So Shaq Brewster, who has been covering Wisconsin for us, is watching right now, and he's answered the question I have. He says the recount rules in Wisconsin are this. Wisconsin does not have an automatic recount, even if the unofficial results are extremely close. A losing candidate who does want to ask for a recount must wait until the last day a county board of canvasser meets, which is at least 1 week after the election. The deadline for requesting a recount is 3 business days after the Elections Commission receives the last statement from a county board of canvassers. This is from the Elections Commission. So if the loser of Wisconsin thinks it is too close, they do have recourse, but an automatic trigger does not exist in that state. Steve, why are we not, what is keeping us from calling Arizona?
Well, there's a lot of votes still, and the vote in Arizona, let's call it up here on the screen. You're sitting at a lead of 130,000 votes there for Joe Biden. Let's take a look in Maricopa. This is the vast majority of the state. It's come down further. Remember, they do it in 3 buckets. The vote comes in 3 buckets in Arizona. The first bucket, we said, was going to be the most favorable to Democrats. It was the early vote, from the earliest votes that were cast up until this past weekend. So we knew that was going to be the most favorable to Democrats. It got the lead up in Maricopa County when those votes came into like 10 points. Biden was ahead, I think, a little bit above 10 points when that first came in. What's happening right now, what's being added to this right now, are the votes that were cast today, or yesterday. I guess you'd say yesterday now. But the votes that were cast on Election Day in person. And we knew that was going to be a big Republican group. And you see, so far, Trump has cut into Biden's lead. We want to know exactly how many of those same-day votes are left. Can he cut closer with that? And then there's this third group. It's the folks who sent in their early votes, brought them in at the very last minute. How does that group break? We have to see that.
All right, Steve Kornacki, incredible work on that. We finally got the numbers you've been promising us all hour long. We're going to come back to you in a moment, but we do want to now bring in NBC News terrorism analyst Malcolm Nance, as well as NBC News legal analyst Joyce Vance. She is a former U.S. attorney and a professor at the University of Alabama Law School. Let me begin with you, if I can, Joyce, because the big question tonight not only has to do with all these counts that we're going to see continued throughout the next couple of days and potential legal challenges, but it really has to do with the rhetoric coming out of the White House this evening, which is one of concern, raising doubt about this process, trying to stop the vote, and ultimately threatening to take this to the Supreme Court, as we heard there from President Trump. And so the legal question to you today at this moment is the concern that you have about the way this plays out legally?
I thought it was relatively shocking to hear even this president in the White House say that not every American's vote should be counted. Essentially, he said, let's stop counting votes. You're trying to steal the election from me. Enough is enough. And as Katie pointed out earlier, this is not the rhetoric used by someone who's confident that if all of the votes are counted, they're going to favor him. This is the sort of rhetoric we hear from someone who thinks that they're going to lose the election and is desperate to suppress votes. And that's exactly what President Trump's strategy is. It's one of suppression. Republicans have already launched suits or are prepared to launch suits in many of these close call states, essential states for Vice President Biden to win. So what we should expect to see over the next few days will be an effort not to change the rules in these states, but to go vote by vote and try to obliterate votes to make ballots not count based on challenges that Republicans will try to bring.
Malcolm, I appreciate you staying up late. I'm going to give you the final word. When you look at the long list of things the president has said and done over the past couple of years, this one fits the playbook of what many are saying is an authoritarian leader or an attempt at authoritarianism in this country. Apologies for that.
Well, I wouldn't say that it's an attempt. We heard his words tonight. This is an authoritarian leader. I mean, he essentially wants to pull a full Belarus. He wants the election to be called in his favor, and he expects the organizations and systems in place to do that. But one thing that's working in our favor is that this election is actually going so long. To be quite honest, I just got up. But this election, with the count going on, which in some instances could favor him, that has actually tempered some of the hotter heads out there.
All right, Malcolm Nance, I appreciate Joyce Vance. Thank you as well. Appreciate both of your time this morning.
Before we go, can I just sit down, take a moment, take a breath, and just send my love and appreciation to Steve Kornacki for all that he's been doing. You have your own emoji on Twitter. It's a tracking Kornacki emoji. That is the pinnacle of success. I mean, that kind of doesn't sound great. You've been doing a great job.
Out what it is, but that's very kind of you, Katie.
No, you've been doing amazing, and I know you're not going to get any sleep, and you're still going to be working for us tomorrow. Thank you for making this night enjoyable to watch and understandable with all of the crazy numbers that are out there. So, Steve Kornacki, thank you. That's going to do it for us. I'm Katie Tur.
And I'm Ayman Wahideen. Coming up, our election coverage continues with Morning Joe. Don't go anywhere.
We feel good about where we are. We really do. I'm here to tell you tonight, we believe we're on track to win this election. We knew because of the unprecedented early vote and the mail-in vote that it was going to take a while. We're going to have to be patient until the hard work of tallying the votes is finished. And it ain't over till every vote is counted. Every